What you know, alibis. Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. Good to have you here. It's Monday, May 5th, day 9 in the Karen Reed trial. In the books, another tense day on cross-exam with a couple of the witnesses. I want to give you a heads up about tomorrow. The episode is going to be out very late because my son has a ceremony for graduating the EMT program at the Career Center at his high school. So I'm going to be going to that. And then next Thursday, again, the episode will be out late because he graduates high school. So really exciting times around here, but I will do my best to get these episodes out as quickly as I can. We're going to jump right in. Back on the stand was the woman yesterday who testified about the blood alcohol level for Karen Reed, and the defense brings up things that could impact those results, like certain variables or conditions, and the witness agreed. Also, she was asked if she measured the blood alcohol levels of anybody other than Karen Reed. No. The next witness, Ryan Nagel, he has a sister named Julie, and on January 29th of 2022, he was at CF McCarthy's with his sister Julie, a friend named Ricky, and his ex-girlfriend Heather. They got there about 8 or 9 and left before midnight. After they left McCarthy's, they were headed home, but his sister texted to pick her up from 34 Fairview. He said he knows Bryan Albert Jr. through his sister, but they're not friends, and he's never been inside the residence. He says as they're driving down Cedar Crest before turning onto Fairview, he sees Karen's SUV coming in their direction. Karen put the blinker on to take her right on Fairview. They kind of met at the intersection, and Karen's car turned first. Once Ryan was at the residence, it took a couple of minutes for his sister to come out. And when she did, he opened up the door. He was sitting in the passenger seat, and they stood there and talked for a couple of minutes about whether or not she was going to take the ride with them. There was some talk of them coming in to join the celebration, but they didn't. When they left, the path of travel took the driver's side right next to the driver's side of the SUV. As the witness passed, he saw the interior light was on, and he did see Karen in the driver's seat staring straight ahead. He said the passenger seat was empty, and he didn't hear any arguing or yelling while he was outside the house. On cross, you were there for 5 minutes. The witness could still see bare ground. The snow was just really starting to fall. He assumes the ground was hard because it was cold out. He saw the red glow of taillights and didn't see any missing pieces. Looking towards the flagpole, he did not see a body laying on the ground. The driver's side door was closed, and he just didn't see John at all. The next witness, Heather Maxon, she dated the previous witness a few years ago and was in the truck when they went to pick up Julie. She recounts seeing that dark SUV. They let Karen and John turn on Fairview before them. She did see Karen driving and John in the front passenger seat. She did not know them personally. Karen and John were driving about 100 feet in front of them. The witness said she did not want to go into the residence. She wanted to go home. She never saw anybody get out of Karen's car, didn't see anybody walk by them or go in the house. They did drive by the SUV as they left. She saw Karen on the driver's side, and the dome light was on. On cross, she really can't remember if she was on her phone while they were waiting for Julie to decide if she was taking the ride or not, and she said nobody's ever requested to have her phone. Next witness, Sarah Levinson, a friend of Julie's and Bryan Albert Jr.'s. She went to Bryan Albert Jr.'s house with Julie to celebrate his birthday. They got there about 7 or 8 p.m. Bryan's mom, sister, and aunt left around 8:20-ish before anybody else arrived. Between 8 or 9, 4 other girls showed up, and she named them as Courtney, Catherine, Emily, and Mary. Later on, a cousin of Bryan's came as well. She said if you're seated at the table, you really can't see outside, and she didn't look outside. There was no drama or arguments at the party, and nobody else came into the house that night. She was planning to leave with Julie, but Jen and Matt McCabe ended up and drove them home. They all left around 1:30 or 2, and at that point, there was a dusting of snow on the ground, but you could still see the grass sticking out. She left out of the front door arm in arm with Julie so she wouldn't slip. They drove past the flagpole, and she thinks maybe she was on her phone, but she didn't see anything when they drove by. On cross, going into January 29th, you had never met their dog. She said she isn't sure, but the defense reminds her she had previously testified she had never met the dog. And he asks, is that because the dog wasn't good with strangers? The witness said she doesn't know why she never met the dog. Jen was the one who offered her the ride home. And she said that Matt was at the car, but he realized he had left his jacket and walked back inside through the front door and then back out again. Nobody from law enforcement contacted her until 9 months later, and that would have been in October of 2022. When they did, Trooper Proctor was the one who did the interview. She said Julie did call her before she did the interview, and the subject was somewhat about the interview. On redirect, they show an outdoor photo of the house and ask if the lights inside would have illuminated the ground near the flagpole, and she said no. The next witness, Katie McLaughlin, she is a firefighter paramedic, and on the 29th, they arrived within 5 or 6 minutes of getting the call. She said the sirens were not activated and explains that they mainly use that to clear cars off the road. She and her partner got the stretcher and brought it close to John near the curb. His head was closest to her. Her colleagues lifted him off the ground, put him on the backboard, and then the stretcher. She was at the head of the stretcher, and firefighter Flamati wanted her to get more information from Karen to see if they could find out if there were any conditions that might help explain what could have happened. They wanted to be able to pass any information on to the hospital. Karen told the witness John's name, date of birth. She denied any medical history or daily medications. She said Karen was moving around, so the witness was moving with her to talk. The witness asked Karen about any trauma that preceded this, and that's when she says Karen said, I hit him, and she said it 4 times. Jen McCabe was next to them, and Jen told Karen to calm down, and then Karen repeated it again. An officer asked Karen, what? She repeated it, and the officer signaled his superior to come over there. The witness didn't clarify the statement with Karen because given the situation and how emotional it was, she just didn't feel comfortable pushing her. She said it wasn't the right time and it wasn't her place. She did tell her colleagues about the statement. She was the one, by the way, that drove the ambulance with John in it to the hospital. She knew Caitlin Albert. They were in the same grade, same high school, had mutual friends, and they would hang out in high school with their mutual friend groups. She really wouldn't consider her a friend, but sees her occasionally at social events, but nothing one-on-one. They were friends on social media at the time this happened. Since the event, she doesn't think she has seen her, and she never talked with Caitlin about this. They play dash cam video and have the witness identify Karen talking to 2 officers. She identifies herself, and she's standing in close proximity and facing Karen, and it looks like they're talking. And then you see the witness walk out of the frame. On cross, you said the most important thing is to determine the cause of the injury. Why is that? And she says to gather as much as they can as far as his history and any recent event that could have precipitated the event. Defense, you said on direct, you wanted to find out what happened so you could relay that to others so that medical assistance could continue. One of the ways you do that is writing it down, and the witness says no. The defense asks who she spoke to before her testimony. She had 3 meetings, one in January, one a few weeks ago when they reviewed testimony from the first trial, and then yesterday briefly for them to tell her that she would be testifying today and also wanted to know if she had any questions. At these meetings, she spoke to different people, the DA, Brennan, witness advocate, and different troopers at different meetings. 2 weeks ago, she watched her testimony from the first trial with Brennan, the witness advocate, and Trooper Tully. The state said he would ask her about her relationship with Caitlin. Defense, did you tell anyone last year about your relationship with Caitlin Albert? She said no. Only when there started to be harassment and insinuations that started coming out online. The defense says, my question is, before the information was disclosed during the first trial, in any of your interviews, did you volunteer you had a relationship with Caitlin? She said she had told the DA before the first trial. And the defense asked, how was there harassment before the first proceeding? She said, because it's out there on the internet. The defense says that the relationship wasn't disclosed yet. And she said, I don't think you understand what I'm saying. It had been published on the internet before the first trial. But she doesn't know who she told about this at the meeting. But back to the call at Fairview and the clip where Karen is standing across from her. The witness says it was around this time when Karen said, I hit him, and repeated that for a total of 4 times. The defense asks who the officer was that was standing nearby when this was said, and she said, Officer Seraph. Then the officer said to go get the boss over there. Defense, you said she was hysterical. You said last year, obviously upset, overly frantic and hysterical. Yes. He plays that video again, and you see the witness and Karen enter the frame from the side and says that's the first time you and Karen joined Jen and the other officer. So he plays some more and stops it, and it's where the witness and Karen are facing each other. He plays it again and quotes the witnesses saying Karen was almost hysterical and asked, does she look that way? The witness said, that was me describing the entire scene. The defense says, but she wasn't overly frantic in that video. The witness says, I don't know if you can see anything from that video. You can't hear anything. Defense, was she running around? The witness said she had been. The defense said, I didn't ask you that. But the witness said she had stopped running around in that video. Defense, according to you, that's when Jen said to Karen, you need to calm down. You're hysterical. And the witness said, yes. Who in that video appeared to be doing most of the talking? Was my client moving her arms, or was it Mrs. McCabe? The witness said, I think Mrs. McCabe was saying to calm down because of the statements that Karen was making. She was trying to get her to stop. The defense asked, when you claim to hear this, where is Firefighter Flamati and Firefighter Nuttall? The witness said, in the ambulance. So the defense points out the doors closed and the engine running, heat's blasting because it's cold. I guess that can be loud. And she says, yes. The witness says they were close to the ambulance, maybe a few yards away. And the defense says, by the way, those are thick metal doors that lock. Yes. You told the firefighters what you claim to have heard. And she said, I told them what was said. The defense asked if they heard it directly from her. And the witness said, I went back and I said, she's saying I hit him. You were asked a year ago about your relationship with Caitlin by me, and specifically, you said, I went to school with someone named Caitlin Albert. The witness says, I believe so. Defense, so that was not an accurate statement about your relationship. The judge asked the witness if it's accurate, and the witness says that's a fact. Defense, you didn't offer up that you're friends, but the witness says we're not. But you didn't say you were in the same friend group. The witness said, no. I said, I knew her, but I wouldn't say we're friends. We've known each other for years, but there's not a one-on-one relationship, just seeing each other in group settings. The defense says you went to middle school together, high school together, you socialized, you went on day trips with her and others, and 4th of July weekend getaways with friend groups. And one of your best friends lived with Caitlin in college, and you visited on more than one occasion, spending the night. The witness says, yes, maybe a handful of times. You've taken photos with her. You've been to celebrations with her. Yes. The defense gives her photos that I assume includes her with Caitlin, but there are objections left and right that are sustained, and we don't see those. He points out their relationship goes back a decade or more, and the witness says, yes, because we went through the same school systems. Defense, you've been photographed on many occasions at celebrations with Caitlin and others? Yes. There's another member of the Albert family you've spoken with about this case, and she says no. The defense says January 30th of 2022, the Canton Police Department contacted you to set up an interview with Trooper Proctor, and that investigator was Kevin Albert. The witness said no, it was a Massachusetts state trooper that called her. She knows who Kevin is Bryan's brother, but she says she's never spoken to Kevin. He says, if you aren't sure who called you, how could you say it's not Kevin Albert? She said she only talked to state troopers. They go back to Karen's statements, and the defense talks about people reacting differently to stressful situations. They may speak in broken sentences, and the witness agrees. She does not have notes related to the incident or to the "did I hit him" statement. She said her role does not require her to write a report. He plays the dash cam video again and has her point out where she was. And he tells her to look at her left and her right hand as the video plays and asks what she's looking down at. The witness said she would write things on her glove as she got information about John. They play again and has her point out at what point in the video she says Karen made the statement. And he says she's not hysterical. The witness said it's hard to tell from a video. Karen was not totally in view the entire time. She was upset, and I would say she was hysterical. The defense asks if she sees a cop handcuff Karen or call someone over to handcuff her, because if she says I hit him, that's a confession, correct? The witness said, your client said I hit him, and she said it 4 times. The defense says my client walks away. The witness said you would have to talk to Officer Seraph about that. The defense says, oh, we have. And the witness says, you should. They play video again, and the defense points out she's looking at and writing on her glove, and they pause. Karen is in the frame, and the defense says, this is an example of my client being hysterical. You're still writing on the glove, maybe his demographics or how he was injured, that he was hit by a car. The witness said she did not know what those statements meant. She had it in her head, and she was going to go tell them that. Defense, you didn't memorialize that statement anywhere. No. Where's the glove? She said, I don't have it, obviously. Once you're done, you scratch everything out and throw it away. She went to the ambulance to report the statement Karen made. On redirect, the Commonwealth points out that she explained the relationship with her and Caitlin over and over through cross over 20 times. Yes. The Commonwealth points out they did not have a one-on-one relationship. And as far as the meeting with Trooper Proctor, you were asked about that at the prior trial, and you do not recall who set up that meeting. And she says correct. She's asked, when Karen said, I hit him, did you know what with? Did she say with a fist, with a car? Why didn't you ask more questions? The witness said she felt bad for Karen, and it's not her job. She said it was a disturbing, emotional scene. How do you remember she made those statements? The witness said, I will never forget those statements. The defense gets back up, and you say it was a disturbing scene. That's when things get missed and emotions play a role. You never heard my client say, could I hit him? Did I hit him? The witness said, no, I heard I hit him repeatedly. The defense says you did start talking about your relationship with Caitlin in more detail under my questioning. I started showing you photographs. But as far as Kevin Albert, did Trooper Proctor tell you he had texted with Kevin Albert about setting up your interview? Did Proctor tell you Kevin texted him that he had already coordinated that with you? The witness said, no, never. The last witness of the day, Paul Gallagher, he is retired from the Canton PD. On January 29th at 6 a.m., he was off shift and would have reported to work later that day, but he was called in shortly after 6 from Sergeant Sean Good and was told where and what was going on. He got the address wrong at first, but did respond to Fairview for what they called an unattended death. He got some gear, including a tent from his home, and went and grabbed winter gear from the police department. At that point, the Massachusetts State Police were not responding. When he got there, there were only Canton police officers there. He was the superior officer on scene. When he got there, the last fire truck was pulling away. He saw Sean Good first, Lank, Mulaney, and Seraph. The lights were on the patrol cars, but no sirens. Sergeant Good told him who was down, and he knew of John, but didn't know him personally. At that point, John had been removed from the scene. He went over to the area where John was found, and he pointed out the weather was bad. The wind was blowing in all directions. He was examining the scene and had no reason at that point to start a criminal investigation. The area where John was found, you could see where people had walked up to the area. He said it was dark and the sun was coming up, but visibility still wasn't great. There was no light coming from the house that he could see. He said maybe a door light at one or two of the other houses, but there were no civilians there on scene, and nobody from 34 Fairview came out, and none of the neighbors did either. He saw blood in a circular pattern, and crime scene tape was blowing in the wind into the crime scene. And he said there was no point in putting up the tent due to the wind and the weather. Sergeant Good and Lank went inside the Fairview residence. He decided since state police weren't responding, he would process the scene to try to find out if there was a medical episode John may have had. He focused only on the area John was found because it was getting covered quickly with the snow. When he arrived, the snow was around 4 inches deep and it was coming down at a rate of about an inch or two an hour. He decided not to use a shovel because he didn't want to break or miss something like a glass, a weapon, a medical bottle. And because he saw blood, he thought a leaf blower would be best because it can be controlled better versus a shovel. Sergeant Good left the scene to get the leaf blower. He wanted to collect the blood. It was frozen or coagulated. So he got red Solo cups from a Lieutenant Kelhair from the Canton PD who lived in the neighborhood. He chose those because they were plastic. It wouldn't get soggy, it wouldn't leak, and they could be transported to the lab and let the lab decide how to get that out. He had Sergeant Good video him with the leaf blower to memorialize it to show the effectiveness versus a shovel and why he would choose to use that. They show video of him using that leaf blower, and you see those red spots of blood in the snow. There was no evidence of any footprints or drag marks in the front yard. They show a second video of him using the leaf blower. He stops the video and points out where he found the broken cocktail glass that was brought from the bar the night before. You also still see that blood. You can see bare ground as well. The broken glass was bagged up and taken back to the station, processed, and put into evidence. They eventually transfer it to the state police, and he was part of that. That was on February 1st of 2022, and it was given to a criminalist at the state crime lab. The Solo cups were stacked in a Stop and Shop bag and taken back to the station. Those bags are made from the same kind of paper as evidence bags, and he doesn't know where the bag came from. That evidence was put in a refrigerator and later turned over to the criminalist from the state lab. They did not expand the search except to the curb to see if they could find anything like, did he trip over the curb? He got back to the Canton Police Department just after 8 a.m. Sergeant Lank told him that Jen McCabe had more information and she was at the 34 Fairview residence. So he and Sergeant Lank went together. Bryan Albert answered the door. Nothing inside the house looked out of place, and there was nothing off with the people as far as body language. They went into the house and he stood with Bryan Albert in the family room. He could see people in the kitchen area, and that's where Sergeant Lank and Jen were talking. He did not hear what they were saying. He noted he observed Bryan Albert and nothing about his affect was concerning. They were having a social conversation. There was nothing in the house out of place or anything that looked to be of concern. The two men left and learned that the state police were going to the hospital. He had a conversation with his sergeant, and it was decided it would be best if the Canton Police Department recused themselves from the case, since their best detective's name was Kevin Albert, who is the brother of Bryan Albert, and the witness did not want any perceived bias by the O'Keefe family. That was the end of his efforts until the search warrant on February 1st. Karen's Lexus was brought to the Sally Port of the Canton Police Department on January 29th. The crime scene unit from the state police came to work on the car February 1st. The witness gave them access, and also this is the same time there was the chain of custody for the blood as well as the glass samples. He was there while the processing of the SUV was done, but did not participate. On cross, he asked what other officers were on scene, and that was Lank, Good, Mullaney, and Seraph. Everyone reported to the witness at the scene. He was the superior. Sergeant Lank put the glass in the bag. The defense says the collection of everything was on him, and he wasn't interviewed until April of 2024, which is 2.5 years later. The witness said when he did, it was with the prosecutor. The witness knows Trooper Proctor. He doesn't know if he was the lead investigator, and he doesn't know how they assigned their cases. He knew Proctor was one of the leads and maybe had a partner. He was never interviewed by the Canton PD about his role at the scene before April of last year. He did brief his superiors, but there was no formal report written by him or no formal interview with him as far as the Canton PD went. Again, he says he never wrote any report about what he did at the scene that day. The defense says when you respond to a scene as a first responder, you would expect to write a report. The witness said not the supervisor and not the ranking person at a homicide scene. The witness says we didn't know at this time there's a crime. He makes sure reports are written by his staff and evidence is logged, but he doesn't write them. He said, I'm the supervisor. The defense says that everything is memorialized by others, but in this case, you were the one who had the leaf blower. You exposed the drinking glass. You directed Sergeant Lank to get this as possible evidence, and the same with the blood. You secured the plastic containers to recover the blood, and you directed someone to get the bag to put the cups in. And you would agree, in this circumstance, you were the centerpiece of the investigation at that time. The witness said he made sure it was documented by Sergeant Lank. The defense names off who wrote a report, and it doesn't include the witness. Who was the first person to find evidence at the scene? The witness said he doesn't know who saw the first physical evidence. The first thing spotted was the blood. He was the first person to see the glass with the leaf blower. Defense, you would want to know what time of day it was recovered, who was there, what the item was, the condition it was in, exactly where it was recovered as best you can pinpoint, which could play a huge role in any investigation, criminal or otherwise, and the witness agrees it could. The witness did not draw a diagram of where the glass or the blood was found. He did not take notes as he went along due to the conditions at the time. He had a deputy chief that he reported to. Defense, describe what you did to preserve the scene for later investigation. And the witness asks for him to explain what you mean by later investigation. The defense says, have you been trained to preserve scenes? Yes. He's been trained to collect evidence and protect potential evidence. And he said that's what was done here. Once everybody, as far as rescue workers and first responders, were off scene, the original officers there put up crime scene tape. It was documented, photographed. There was the search for evidence with the leaf blower, and the evidence was collected. The defense points out the witness never saw the body. He was told by Sergeant Lank where the body was, but Sergeant Lank had no personal knowledge. And you later gave that information to crime scene investigators who are trying to establish a diagram or a chart about where the evidence was. And the witness said, no, I never spoke to anyone in that manner about that. Defense, didn't you go to the scene with the Massachusetts State Police when they had drones? The witness said, I can clear that up. February 1st, Trooper Proctor wanted to go to the scene, and the CARS team, which is the Crash Accident Reconstruction Team. And once they got there, the witness showed them where he was shown John's body was found. They wanted to put a drone up in the air, but they could not due to FAA regulations and how close in proximity they were to an airport. The defense and the witness go back and forth about the witness and Lank not seeing with their own eyes where John's body was, but the witness did give that information to the teams there on February 1st. Sergeant Lank was told where the body was by Sergeant Good. That information was passed along, and the witness said this is what police officers do. Defense. The officer at the scene helping the reconstructionist establish the car's report was an officer who did not see where John's body was. You got information about where John's body was from someone who didn't see it either. You accompanied Trooper Proctor and the cars unit to document Fairview Road. The witness said, I thought I explained it, that it couldn't be done. I went to show where John's body was found and to be there in case any neighbors came outside. The defense said, you told Bryan Tully you went with Trooper Proctor. Now, at this point, the witness is shaking his head no, and the defense acknowledges you're shaking your head no. The witness said he had a meeting with Prosecutor Lally and Tully was present. I don't recall Tully asking me any questions. The defense says in Tully's report, it was questions you were being asked by Lally, and he says yes. Did you say in front of Trooper Tully that you accompanied Trooper Proctor to document Fairview? The witness says, meaning they were documenting Fairview Road. The report is not clear. The defense says the report's not clear, so that's an inaccurate report. The witness said, I would not call it inaccurate at all. You're misinterpreting the wording. The defense is like, I see. So even though I just read it directly from the report, the witness says sometimes sentences have different meanings. Defense, you were there at the same time as Proctor, and you knew the cars team were there so they could document the scene. The witness says, I don't know what they do with the drone. No clue. Defense, did you tell any members of the cars team where John's body was? The witness said it was Trooper Proctor. The defense says it's 3 people. The witness says more probably. Defense, no one saw John's body as it lay, and there's no photographs and no videos. The witness said, no, we would not take photos or videos of life-saving measures. The defense says no body cam. The witness says we don't have that. Defense, no dash cam. The witness said dash cams are on the road. John was 8 to 10 feet off the road. The defense says, wait, you're not sure because you never saw him. The witness says that's why he used a range, but he knows where the blood and glass were found. Defense, you met with all the officers when you arrived at the scene, and Officer Seraph had been there since the beginning. He didn't report any statements made by my client, and the witness says no. Defense, you later went back to 34 Fairview with Sergeant Lank when he was interviewing Jen McCabe. Did you ride back to the Canton Police Department with Sergeant Lank? And did he mention his interview with Jennifer McCabe? The witness doesn't remember. Did you write a report? The witness says that officers are responsible for writing their own reports. Defense. A year ago, you testified about the evidence collection of the biological material, which you assumed was blood. How far were you from the Canton Police Department? And the witness says about 1.5 miles. He had his personal vehicle on scene with him, but the defense says you had officers who had their cruisers and you could have dispatched them in furtherance of the investigation. The witness said, I did when I sent Good to get the leaf blower. Defense, you know, the Canton Police Department has evidence collection bags and tools to gather biological material. There's a process. The witness says you can use a Kleenex for gathering DNA, and the defense says in an emergency. The witness said, that's my point exactly. Defense, if you're 1 mile from the Canton Police Department, you could have gotten a swab, but you didn't. The witness said it was an emergency because of the weather, and if they didn't collect it, they were not going to get it. There was a blizzard going on. The defense says 4, 5, 6 minutes drive in a blizzard, you could have dispatched somebody. The witness says, I think 15 minutes would have made a difference. Defense, but you sent Sergeant Good to get a leaf blower. The witness said while he was doing that, they were documenting the scene with photographs. Defense, you could have done that if you went to get a swab. You could have said, Officer Mullaney, get to Canton and get 10 swabs. The witness said he could not have because he would have not had access to the swabs. The defense says, oh, so now if a ranking lieutenant had dispatched him, he couldn't have gotten the swabs? The witness said because he doesn't have access to the BCI where that is kept. The witness says Sergeant Lank could have gotten them, and the defense points out, but you didn't send him. So you go to the home of the lieutenant of detectives, and he gave you red Solo cups? Yes. The defense says the same ones at backyard barbecues? Yes. The defense, they aren't sealed, are they? No. Defense, they're not normally used for evidence collection. And the witness says, absolutely not. The defense says you decide to transport the blood back to the Canton police station. What are the factors you're considering concerning getting that back in good condition? The witness said, so they can get a good sample. The defense asked, but what if the sample was contaminated? The witness says DNA is pretty hardy. The only things that will harm it are radiation, harsh chemicals, UV light. That would affect it, but none of that was present here. The defense says, but what about the DNA? And the witness said, then it would have two sets of DNA when it's tested, and that would benefit you here. The defense says that depends on whose DNA it is. And the witness says, right. Defense, there's a reason blood swabs are handled with such care, with gloves on and masks on. The witness says he doesn't know about that. The defense lists ways it could be contaminated, like spittle when somebody is talking. These solo cups had no lids. You didn't photograph or document where you got the samples from. You had 6 solo cups, and we don't know where specifically the samples came from. Then there are no lids, and they're put into a Stop and Shop bag, which you say are one and the same with evidence bags. The witness said they're made of the same materials. But the defense says, with an evidence bag, you know where it came from. It's manufactured, it's clean, it's ready to receive evidence, like from the homicide of a police officer. And the witness said, we aren't at a homicide at this point in the investigation. The defense goes on about the bags and how they're made and shipped to ensure they're not contaminated, and says the Canton Police Department pays extra money to ensure that. You don't know where the Stop and Shop bag has been, who handled it. Maybe it had milk and eggs in it. There's a reason evidence bags are more expensive, so they're not the same, are they? And the witness says no. The defense says, so the solo cups are in the evidence bag, and the bag was in Lank's vehicle. It's not forensically sealed. There's no evidence tape. No. The defense says the cups are open, and if they melted, you have a combination of liquid blood and liquid snow. The witness said they were put into a refrigerator at the police station. He's asked if he has an evidence log. The witness says no. Have you ever seen an evidence log that shows they were in the refrigerator? The witness said, I removed them myself. The defense says, but on January 29th, they're taken there by Sergeant Lank. Does Canton PD have evidence logs? And the witness said he doesn't know. He's not the evidence officer. It's all computerized. He says when evidence gets logged in, the officer puts in a description and hits the space bar, and then an evidence number is assigned. Defense, so every time it's checked out and put back in, it's logged. It's a digital fingerprint. He tells the witness, you did narcotics. You're not going to put fentanyl on somebody's desk because it needs a trace. But we've never seen an evidence log for these items that were taken from 34 Fairview. The witness said he would not have access to it. He says that there are 2 people who handled this stuff once it goes into permanent evidence in the evidence room. The defense says that's the way it's supposed to work, but you've never seen an evidence log showing where that blood went from January 29th to February 1st? No. And that was it for testimony today. The witness will be back on the stand, I believe, on cross-exam tomorrow. That's it for today. Hope you guys have a good rest of your evening, and we will see you soon.